Okay, here we are going to study about the respiratory system in anatomy. First, we are going to tell about the introduction of respiratory system. The respiratory system is a complex organ system responsible for the exchange of gases between the atmosphere and the blood. A respiratory system means what? It is a complex organ system which is responsible for the exchange of gases between from where to where. It is from atmosphere to the blood, atmosphere and blood. Okay, it supplies oxygen required for cellular metabolism and removes carbon dioxide produced during the metabolic process. The respiratory system will supply oxygen for the cellular metabolism. What is cellular metabolism? Cellular metabolism refers to the chemical process. It is a chemical process that occurs within the living cells for what? To maintain life. The cellular process which help in the cell to obtain energy, synthesize essential molecules and remove waste products. The cellular metabolism is essential for our growth, repair, reproduction and maintaining normal body functions. The system is supplying oxygen that requires for cellular metabolism and removes carbon dioxide produced during the metabolic processes. Then respiratory system plays role in phonation, olfaction, acid-base balance and defense against microorganisms. These are the functions of respiratory system. Then next is definition. Definition of respiratory system. The respiratory system is the system of organs. Respiratory system is a system of organs involved in breathing. Breathing means there are two phases. It involves inspiration and expiration. The inspiration and expiration occurs by pressure changes between the lungs and atmosphere. Then next is gaseous exchange. Gas exchange in the lungs involves three main processes: ventilation, diffusion, and perfusion, occurring in the alveoli. Alveoli is the part of respiratory system. What is happening in gaseous exchange? It moves oxygen from inhaled air into the blood and carbon dioxide from the blood into the lungs to be exhaled. Then consisting of air passages. The air passages of the respiratory system are conducting zone. It is also called conducting zone. It transports air between the external environment and the lungs. The pathway of air passage includes nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchial tree, and bronchioles. Then lungs. Lungs are the primary spongy cone-shaped organs of the human respiratory system that is located in the chest, which is responsible for exchanging oxygen from the air with carbon dioxide from the blood. Then the last is respiratory muscles. The respiratory muscles, the primary muscle of respiration is the diaphragm, which causes inspiration by contracting and descending along with external intercostals. Okay, now we'll learn about introduction and definition. If you don't want to write this much, then you have to write a introduction like the respiratory system is a complex organ system responsible for exchange of gases between the atmosphere and the blood. Then go for definition. In definition, you have to write the respiratory system is a system of organs which involved in what? Breathing and gaseous exchange. The next point, the respiratory system consisting of air passages, lungs, and respiratory muscles. Then you have to draw the diagram of respiratory system. In this, you can see nasal cavity. First one is nasal cavity, then pharynx, then larynx, then trachea, then lungs, bronchus and bronchioles, then diaphragm and alveoli. We can learn more about this. Respiratory tract is divided into two types, that is upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. In upper respiratory tract, there is nose, nasal cavity, paranasal sinus, pharynx and larynx. In lower respiratory tract, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, lungs and alveoli. In upper respiratory tracts, we are going to learn about the nose. Introduction of nose. The nose is the uppermost part of the respiratory system and forms the entrance of the respiratory tract. Nose is the uppermost part of the respiratory system and it forms the respiratory tract entrance. Next is it is responsible. The functions of nose is what that is filtering, warming and moistening the inspired air and also help in the sense of smell, that is olfaction. Olfaction. Then definition. The nose is the organ of respiration and olfaction that allows air to enter the respiratory tract and help in smelling and filtering air. Nose is a organ of respiration and olfaction. Respiration means exchanging of gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide. Olfaction means smelling, sensation of smell. Then we are going to learn about the parts of nose. The nose is mainly divided into two parts, that is external nose and nasal cavity. Nose is divided in two parts, that is external nose and nasal cavity. The first one is external nose. What is external nose? External nose is the visible part of the nose present on the face. Nose is present on the center of the face, that we can see, that is the external nose is the visible part. We can see visible part of the nose present on the face. The structure of nose is a triangular shaped projection made up of bones and cartilages. The outer portion, the visible part of the nose, is made by bones and cartilages. Then that the shape of the external part of the nose is triangular shaped projection. Then there is part of nose, that is root, bridge, apex, ala of nose. Then one more is there, nostrils, that is the two opening of our nose. We can go for supporting structures, that is bones and cartilages. First one is nasal bone, frontal bone, maxillary bone. Then we are going to study about nasal cavity. Nasal cavity is a hollow space. It is a hollow space that present behind the external nose. It is present behind the external nose and divided into two halves by the nasal septum. Nasal cavity is divided into two halves by nasal septum. Then extend. It is nasal cavity is from nostrils to pharynx. Then we can learn about the boundaries of nasal cavity, that is nasal bone, frontal bone, sigmoid bone and maxillary bone. Then floor is hard palate, medial wall is nasal septum and then lateral wall is concave, nasal concave. Then nasal septum. Nasal septum divides the nasal cavity into right and left. Previously we talked that the nasal cavity is divided by the nasal septum. Half. The nasal septum is formed by ethmoid bone, vomer bone, septal cartilage. Then nasal concave. Turbinates. It's also called turbinates. There are three nasal concave: superior concave, middle concave and inferior concave. These concaves will increase the surface area and help in filtration. Concaves are helping in filtration. It will increase the surface area also. Lining of nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is lined by mucous membrane. There are two types, respiratory epithelium and olfactory epithelium. In respiratory epithelium, there is ciliated columnar epithelium. Ciliated columnar epithelium. It helps for mucus secretion and filters air. In olfactory epithelium, it is present in the roof, then contains smell receptors. Then blood supply. The blood supply of nose. It is from facial artery and maxillary artery. The nerve supply is from trigeminal nerve. Okay, today we learned about the reproductive systems, introduction, definition, diagram, then divisions. Then we learned about the nose, first part of respiratory system, that is nose. Then about nasal cavity. Then kindly reply me for if you want any sociology or psychology, then physiology. If you want any notes for this or classes for this, kindly message me or comment me. Then one more thing, if you want any tuition for these subjects, that's anatomy, physiology, sociology and psychology in Malayalam, I am taking tuition. Kindly you can message me in the comment box and subscribe the channel for further notes. Thank you.